What does it mean to be incorruptible in an age where corruption is the very air men breathe, where the warp hungers for every soul born of flesh and thought, and where even angels fall screaming into darkness? This question has echoed through the halls of the Inquisition for 10,000 years, whispered by interrogators whose names have long been ground to ash beneath the weight of endless war. It is a question that has no answer, only consequences. And yet there stands one warrior, one Adeptus Astartes, whose very existence poses this question to the galaxy with every breath he draws, every enemy he slays, every moment he refuses to bend beneath the impossible pressure of doubt. His name is spoken in sanctuaries and torture chambers alike. His legend carries the scent of heresy and heroism intertwined. He is Titus. Before the forge world of Graia burned beneath the green tide of orc invasion, before the chaos sorcerer Nemeroth tore reality asunder seeking the power source buried within that dying planet, Captain Demetrian Titus of the Ultramarines Second Company was already a figure of whispered reverence among the sons of Guilliman. 200 years of service had carved his reputation into the annals of the chapter, battle after battle, compliance after compliance, each victory paid for in blood that lesser men could never understand. He had walked the ash fields of Xenos worlds and stood before hive cities falling to corruption, never flinching, never questioning, his blade always true. The Codex Astartes was his scripture, but unlike so many of his brothers, Titus understood that scripture must breathe, must adapt, must serve the greater purpose of victory, rather than becoming chains upon tactical necessity. When the distress calls from Graia reached Macragge, when the Inquisition demanded immediate response before the orcs could seize the Titan manufactorums that had supplied the armies of the Emperor for millennia, it was Titus who descended from the heavens like a thunderbolt wrapped in ceramite. The drop pods screamed through atmosphere thick with ash and artillery fire, and he emerged into a war zone that would have broken ordinary men within moments. The orcs had overrun the outer districts, millions of greenskins howling their brutal joy as they tore civilization apart with bare hands and crude weapons. Imperial Guard regiments had been shattered, scattered, reduced to desperate pockets fighting for hours rather than days. And into this carnage came 3 Ultramarines, Titus leading brothers Sidonus and Leandros, 3 against an ocean of green. The battles that followed became legend among those few Imperial forces who survived to witness them. Titus carved through the orc hordes with a fury that seemed almost supernatural, his chainsword screaming hymns of destruction as Xenos blood painted the manufactorum corridors in arterial patterns. He recovered the experimental weapons that might turn the tide. He rallied broken guard units with nothing more than his presence and his voice. He moved through that dying world as though the Emperor himself had anointed him for this singular purpose. But it was when the true enemy revealed itself that Titus faced his first impossible moment. Chaos had come to Graia, wearing the flesh of sorcerers and demons, seeking a power source that could unmake reality itself. And when the warp touched Titus, when he held the corrupted device in his hands, he did not fall. The power source pulsed with energies that should have destroyed him, should have torn his soul apart and left his body a vessel for screaming entities from beyond the veil. Every doctrine, every warning, every piece of knowledge accumulated across 10,000 years of fighting, the ruinous powers declared that no mortal being could withstand such exposure without corruption taking root in their essence. Yet Titus stood. He wielded that tainted power against Nemeroth himself, using the sorcerer's own weapon to cast him down into the warp from which he had crawled. In that moment of victory, covered in the blood of demons and surrounded by the wreckage of a world saved from damnation, Captain Titus should have been celebrated as a hero beyond heroes. Instead, a voice rose in accusation that would echo for 200 years more. Leandros, his own battle brother, young and zealous with the fire of untempered faith, spoke the words that would condemn Titus to torment. He invoked the Codex Astartes. He spoke of corruption's subtle seeding. He demanded that the Inquisition examine the captain who had touched the impossible and survived. The Inquisitor who arrived, cold-eyed and knowing, took Titus without resistance. Titus did not fight, did not protest, did not rage against the injustice of being punished for victory. He went willingly into the hands of those who would spend decades trying to find the taint that logic demanded must exist within him. The cells of the Inquisition swallowed him whole, and the Second Company of the Ultramarines lost a captain who had never failed them. Whispers spread across Ultramar like plague, and none could say whether Titus was martyr or monster. 2 centuries passed in darkness and examination, in tests that would have shattered weaker minds into madness. The Inquisition peeled back every layer of Titus's psyche, searching for the corruption that their doctrines promised must be hiding within the shadows of his soul. They subjected him to rituals of purification that left other subjects as hollow shells, to psychic probes that burned through mental defenses like promethium through flesh. And time after time, examination after examination, the Inquisition found nothing. The purity of Titus was absolute, untouchable, maddening to those who could not comprehend how such immunity could exist. Eventually, the whispers shifted from accusation to wonder. Perhaps here was something the Imperium had not seen before. Perhaps here was a weapon that could be wielded against the very forces that sought humanity's destruction. The Deathwatch claimed him, the Ordo Xenos recognizing that a sole proof against corruption was too valuable to leave rotting in inquisitorial cells. Stripped of his captain's rank, reduced to a lieutenant serving among the finest Xenos hunters in the galaxy, Titus began his second life of war. He fought alongside brothers from 100 chapters, each mission taking him deeper into the darkness between stars, where humanity's enemies bred in shadows. The long vigil tested him in ways even his century of service had not, forcing him to adapt to warriors who did not share Guilliman's gene legacy, to tactics that the Codex never imagined. And through it all, Titus remained unbroken, his faith in the Emperor and in his purpose never wavering despite everything the galaxy had inflicted upon him. Some began to whisper that he was blessed. When the tyrannic wars erupted across the eastern fringe once more, when Hive Fleet Leviathan's tendrils reached toward worlds that had burned a generation before, the call went forth for every warrior who could hold a blade. Titus returned to the Ultramarines, not as the captain he had been, but as something both lesser and greater. A lieutenant bearing scars that spoke of journeys no one could fully comprehend. The brothers who had known him were dead or changed, the chapter itself transformed by Guilliman's return and the creation of Primaris Marines. Yet Titus adapted, as he had always adapted, becoming a bridge between the old ways and the new, a living testament that the Emperor's angels could endure any trial and emerge stronger. He fought the Great Devourer with the same fury he had shown on Graia, but there are questions that cannot be silenced, truths that lurk in the spaces between certainties. The Inquisition found no corruption in Titus, yet they never explained why he alone among all warriors could touch the warp's poison and remain pure. The librarians of the chapter have studied his psychic resonance, finding patterns that match no template in their ancient archives. And in the deepest vaults of the Ordo Hereticus, sealed behind locks that require 3 Inquisitor Lords to open, there exists a single document written in a hand that predates the heresy itself. It speaks of a prophecy of souls forged in the Emperor's own image, vessels designed to carry light into the final darkness. The name written at the prophecy's heart has been burned away, but 3 letters remain visible at the document's edge: Tit-Bit. The document has haunted the dreams of Inquisitor Lord Thrax since the night he first gazed upon its ancient vellum, since the moment his eyes traced those 3 surviving letters and felt certainty crumble beneath his feet like ash before a funeral wind. He has served the Ordo Hereticus for 4 centuries, has condemned 10,000 souls to cleansing flame, has never once questioned the righteousness of his purpose beneath the Emperor's gaze. Yet now doubt creeps through his thoughts like a cancer that no faith can excise. The prophecy speaks of vessels, of souls designed before the Imperium itself was born, instruments of a war that transcends even the long war against chaos. If Titus is such a vessel, if his immunity is not miracle but mechanism, then what does that make the Emperor who designed him? What terrible foresight demanded such weapons be hidden across 10 millennia? In the chapel crypts beneath the fortress of Hera on Macragge, where the preserved bodies of ancient chapter masters sleep their eternal vigil, Chaplain Cassius kneels before the altar of remembrance and speaks prayers that have lost their familiar comfort. He knew Titus before Graia, fought beside him in campaigns that shaped the Eastern Fringe, witnessed the young captain's rise with a mentor's pride and a warrior's respect. When Leandro spoke his accusations, Cassius felt something break within the chapter's spirit, a wound that never fully healed. Now Titus has returned, transformed by Rubicon Primaris into something greater and stranger, and Cassius sees in his eyes a depth that was not there before. 200 years in inquisitorial cells, 200 years of having one's soul examined by those who trust nothing and no one. What prayers sustained him? What faith emerged from that crucible unbroken? Leandro serves now as a chaplain himself, his zealotry rewarded with the skull helm and the Crozius Arcanum, his certainty calcified into doctrine that brooks no compromise. He has never spoken publicly of Graia, never acknowledged that his accusation sent a captain into darkness, never admitted even in the silence of his own heart that perhaps he acted from fear rather than faith. But he watches Titus now across the length of the stratagem, watches his former captain command respect from Primaris Marines who never knew the legend of Graia, and something cold twists in his chest. Titus was proven pure, vindicated by the very Inquisition that Leandro's invoked. This should bring relief, should heal the wound between them. Instead, Leandros feels only the terrible weight of a question he cannot ask. If Titus was always pure, what does that make the one who condemned him? The whispers have spread beyond Ultramar now, carried by Deathwatch veterans returning to their home chapters, by inquisitorial acolytes who trade secrets like currency in the shadow markets of knowledge. They speak of a lieutenant who cannot be corrupted, whose soul the warp cannot touch, whose very existence defies the fundamental truths upon which the Imperium has built its understanding. Of chaos, some call him blessed, the Emperor's own shield made manifest in transhuman flesh. Others name him abomination, arguing that immunity itself must be a form of corruption so subtle that even the Inquisition's methods cannot detect its presence. The Ordo Malleus has opened 17 separate investigations into his nature, each contradicting the others, each producing conclusions that satisfy no one. And in the spaces between official inquiry, darker theories take root like poisonous flowers blooming in graves. On the shrine world of Gathalamer, where the faithful crawl on bleeding knees toward cathedrals, built from the bones of martyrs, a blind preacher speaks to crowds that number in the millions. He has never heard the name Titus, knows nothing of Ultramarines or Graia or prophecies sealed in inquisitorial vaults. Yet the words that pour from his lips, the visions that burn behind his sightless eyes, speak of an angel who walks between corruption and purity, who carries within him a flame that predates the Astronomicon itself. The Ecclesiarchy's agents record his sermons, analyze his prophecies, cross-reference his ravings with 1,000 other mystics across the Imperium. The patterns they find disturb them deeply. Across 100 worlds, touched by no common thread of communication, seers and madmen speak of the same figure, the same impossible soul, the same approaching moment of revelation that will shake the Imperium to its foundations. In the stratagems of the Indomitus Crusade, where Roboute Guilliman wages his desperate war to hold humanity's crumbling realm together, the Primarch has received the reports concerning Lieutenant Titus. He reads them in the quiet hours between campaigns, when even his transhuman constitution demands moments of reflection, if not rest. Guilliman remembers a time before the heresy, remembers his father's laboratories on Terra, where impossible things were made possible through science that bordered on divinity. He remembers whispered projects, contingencies planned for catastrophes that even the Emperor hoped would never come. The Primarchs were weapons, yes, but they were not the only weapons forged in those desperate years before the Great Crusade. Could Titus be a legacy of that era, a sleeper designed to awaken when darkness grew too deep? Guilliman finds no answers in memory, only more questions that taste of his father's eternal silence. The campaign on Kadaku 4 began as a standard compliance action, a world fallen to chaos insurrection that required the Ultramarines' attention to restore to Imperial rule. Lieutenant Titus led the assault on the primary hive, his tactical acumen and personal valor turning what strategists predicted as a 6-month siege into a 3-week victory. But in the depths of that hive, in chambers where cultists had worshipped entities whose names break mortal minds, Titus encountered something that gave even him pause. A shrine, ancient beyond measure, depicted a figure in armor that predated the Legiones Astartes, wielding weapons that bore the Aquila before the Emperor ever raised that symbol. And the face carved into that shrine, weathered by millennia yet unmistakable in its features, was his own. Titus destroyed the shrine with melted charges, reported nothing of what he found. But the image burned in his memory like a brand. Brother Sergeant Gadriel of the Deathwatch served alongside Titus during the long vigil, fought Zeno's horrors that would have broken lesser warriors, learned to trust the lieutenant with his life and his honor. Now he serves a different master, kneels before an inquisitor whose name is known only to 3 living beings in the galaxy, and speaks of everything he witnessed during those years. The inquisitor listens without expression, recording every detail into memory engrams that will be sealed with genetic locks requiring his death to open. Gadriel does not know why he betrays his former commander, does not understand the compulsion that brought him to the shadowed chamber on a world whose location he cannot recall. When the Inquisitor dismisses him, Gadriel leaves with no memory of the meeting, only a lingering unease that he attributes to battle fatigue. The Inquisitor adds this testimony to a file that grows thicker with each passing year. The Fortress Monastery of the Black Templars does not officially acknowledge communications from the Inquisition, viewing such interactions as beneath the dignity of warriors who answer only to the Emperor's direct will. Yet even their silence cannot prevent certain truths from spreading through the channels of the Adeptus Astartes, cannot stop veterans of the Indomitus Crusade from speaking of an Ultramarine whose soul seems armored against the very touch of damnation. High Marshal Helbrecht has fought beside Titus twice now, has witnessed him walk through warp-spawned phenomena that corroded the faith of lesser men, has seen him emerge unchanged while brothers around him struggled against whispers that sought purchase in their minds. Helbrecht believes in miracles, believes the Emperor's hand guides his champions through darkness. But he also believes in weapons, in tools forged for purpose. Which is Titus, he wonders, and does the distinction matter? In the deepest archives of Mars, where the tech priests guard knowledge that would damn worlds if released, an adept named Zereth Omega has discovered something that should not exist. Cross-referencing battle footage from Graia with genetic samples obtained through channels no Mechanica's servant should possess, she has found anomalies in Lieutenant Titus's biological structure that match no template in the sacred STC databases. His gene seed is pure Ultramarine, descended from Guilliman himself through 10 millennia of careful cultivation. But there are additional markers, sequences that predate the creation of the Space Marines, coding that appears to serve no biological function, yet resonates at frequencies that her instruments can barely detect. When she attempts to report her findings to her superiors, she discovers that her laboratory has been sealed, her access codes revoked, and her name deleted from every record on Mars. She has 3 hours to live, though she does not know it yet, and the Calidus assassin descending through her ventilation system will ensure her silence is eternal. Zereth Omega dies with secrets on her lips that the galaxy will never hear, her final breath a whisper of binary cant that dissolves into the recycled air of her sealed laboratory. The Calidus assassin stands over her cooling corpse for precisely 11 seconds, ensuring termination is complete before extracting via routes that exist on no schematic, through passages that the Mechanicus itself has forgotten. Within hours, the laboratory is cleansed, its contents incinerated, its very location struck from the architectural records of Mars. Yet secrets have a way of surviving those who carry them, of seating themselves in places no assassin can reach. Before her death, Zereth Omega transmitted a single data packet through channels so ancient that even the Fabricator General does not know they exist. Channels built into Mars before humanity first reached for the stars, and that packet now travels toward a destination that has waited 10,000 years to receive it. On the battle barge Macraig's Honor, Lieutenant Titus stands alone in his personal arming chamber, staring at hands that have killed more enemies of the Emperor than he can accurately count. The Rubicon Primaris transformed him, filled him with new organs and capabilities that make him faster, stronger, more lethal than even his previous transhuman form. Yet in quiet moments like this, when the ship hums with the distant rhythm of void travel and no duty demands his attention, Titus feels something stirring in the depths of his being that he cannot name. It is not corruption, not the whisper of thirsting gods that he learned to recognize during 2 centuries of inquisitorial examination. It is something older, something that feels less like invasion and more like awakening. He has told no one of the shrine on Kadaku 4, of the face that was his face carved millennia before his birth. Some truths are too heavy for words. Chaplain Leandros leads the morning devotionals aboard the strike cruiser Sword of Ultramar, his voice rising in hymns that have guided the sons of Guilliman since the days when the Primarch himself walked among them. The brothers before him bow their heads in reverent attention, their faith genuine, their dedication absolute. Yet Leandros speaks the words without feeling them, mouths the prayers while his mind churns with thoughts that border on heresy. He condemned Titus out of righteous certainty, believing that the Codex Astartes provided answers for all situations, that doubt was simply weakness wearing a reasonable mask. Now Titus has returned, vindicated, transformed, and Leandros finds his certainty crumbling like a fortress built on sand. What if the Codex is not infallible? What if Guilliman himself, returned from death and myth, looks upon Leandros' actions and sees not loyalty but fear? The hymn falters on his lips before he forces it forward. The Inquisitorial fortress on Nemesis Tessera receives visitors only twice per standard year, and even then only those whose authority transcends normal hierarchies of power. Inquisitor Lord Thrax has not left this fortress in 3 decades, has not seen sunlight or breathed unfiltered air since the night he first read the prophecy that now consumes his every waking thought. His agents span the galaxy. His network penetrates organizations that believe themselves immune to observation, and every piece of information concerning Lieutenant Titus flows eventually to his obsessive attention. The pattern he sees emerging terrifies him more than any demon, more than any Xenos horror, more than the slow death of the Imperium itself. Because if the prophecy is true, if Titus is what the ancient document suggests, then everything the Inquisition has built its purpose upon is incomplete at best, catastrophically wrong at worst. The Emperor planned for this. The Emperor planned for everything. On Holy Terra itself, in chambers so deep beneath the Imperial Palace that they predate human habitation of the world, a figure stirs who has not moved in 9,000 years. The stasis field that preserved her dissolves in response to signals that originate from no source anyone living could identify. Commands issued before the heresy that are only now reaching their intended recipient. She is perpetual, one of the undying, a servant of the Emperor who was placed here for this single purpose: to awaken when the vessel approaches readiness, to guide what cannot be allowed to stumble. Her name was struck from all records by the Emperor's own hand, her existence known only to him and to 2 others who died at Ullanor 10 millennia past. She rises from her tomb with joints that do not ache despite their stillness, with eyes that adjust instantly to darkness absolute. The time has come. Titus must be prepared for what he was created to become. The campaign in the Perea Nexus has pushed the Indomitus Crusade to its breaking point, forcing warriors to fight in regions where the warp itself has been silenced, where faith flickers and dies like candles in a hurricane. Guilliman has committed his finest forces to this theater, including elements of the Ultramarines Second Company under Lieutenant Titus's command. The fighting is brutal beyond even Astartes standards, against Necron dynasties whose technology mocks the very concept of mortality and Sisters of Silence, whose null auras create dead zones where even Space Marine psycho-conditioning strains to maintain cohesion. Yet Titus fights through these soul-dead regions without apparent effect, his faith burning steady, while brothers around him struggle against existential emptiness that corrodes certainty itself. Guilliman has noticed. He has watched recordings of Titus operating in null zones that reduce other warriors to mechanical shadows of themselves. The lieutenant remains complete, whole, burning with purpose. Why? In the screaming depths of the warp, where reality is suggestion and thought becomes substance, entities that have existed since before the universe took form watch the material realm with hunger and fascination. They know of Titus, have known of him since before his birth, since before humanity evolved from the primordial ooze of ancient Terra. The four great powers have each sent tendrils toward his soul, testing, probing, seeking purchase where none can be found. And each has recoiled in confusion that borders on pain, encountering in his essence something that should not exist, something that tastes of their ancient enemy yet carries a signature they do not recognize. The gods convene in ways that would shatter mortal understanding, debating what manner of weapon walks the galaxy wearing ultramarine blue. They cannot corrupt him. They have tried for 3 centuries and failed. This has never happened before. This changes everything. Apothecary Equion of the Ultramarines has served for 500 years, has harvested gene seed from fallen brothers beyond counting, has studied the sacred biology of the Adeptus Astartes with devotion that approaches worship. When the order comes from Chief Librarian Tigurius himself to conduct a comprehensive biological analysis of Lieutenant Titus, Equion approaches the task with scholarly detachment that quickly dissolves into disturbed wonder. The readings make no sense. Titus's gene seed is perfect, pure Guilliman lineage without flaw or deviation. Yet surrounding that gene seed, woven into the very fabric of his cellular structure, are patterns that Equion's instruments can detect but not identify. They pulse with a frequency that matches nothing in Ultramarines' records, nothing in the broader archives of the Adeptus Astartes. When Equion attempts to isolate these patterns for closer study, his equipment fails catastrophically, and he finds himself unable to remember what he was doing for a span of 7 minutes. Someone does not want this discovered. The data packet from Mars reaches its destination after 47 days of traveling through systems so ancient, they remember the birth of the first stars. It arrives at a facility that exists in no Imperial record, a station orbiting a dead star in a region of space that cartographers have inexplicably overlooked for 10,000 years. The station's occupants are few and strange, humans modified beyond recognition by technologies that predate the Mechanicus, servants of a purpose older than the Imperium itself. They receive Zereth Omega's final transmission with the reverence of priests receiving scripture, analyzing her findings against archives that would rewrite human history if ever revealed. Their analysis takes 73 seconds. Their conclusion, transmitted through equally ancient channels toward Terra, consists of a single word in a language that humanity has not spoken since before Old Night fell. Confirmed. The vessel walks the galaxy. The contingency approaches activation. The Emperor's final weapon awakens. Titus dreams for the first time since his creation, his enhanced brain producing images that no Astartes should ever experience. He stands in a laboratory of gold and light, surrounded by devices whose purpose he somehow understands, though he has never seen their like. A figure approaches him, robed in radiance, features obscured by brilliance that would blind mortal eyes. The figure speaks without words, implanting knowledge directly into Titus's consciousness. And what Titus learns in that moment shatters every certainty he has ever held. He is not merely an ultramarine enhanced by chance to resist corruption. He was designed, crafted, seeded into Guilliman's gene line with purpose aforethought. The Emperor himself placed the template for Titus's soul into the genetic legacy of the 13th Legion, knowing that 10,000 years hence, when darkness reached its apex, the vessel would be needed. Titus awakens screaming. And for the first time in 3 centuries, he does not know if his loyalty is choice or programming. The scream that tears from Titus's throat echoes through the arming chambers of the Macragge's Honor, a sound so alien to Astartes' discipline that brothers in adjacent quarters reach for weapons before recognizing its source. Sergeant Gaius, first through the door, finds his lieutenant standing rigid as carved stone, eyes fixed on something beyond the chamber's walls, beyond the ship, beyond perhaps the material realm itself. Titus's hands tremble, an impossibility for one whose nervous system was designed to suppress such weakness, and when he finally turns to face his brother, Gaius sees something in those eyes that he has never witnessed in any space marine across 2 centuries of service. He sees fear, yes, but beneath it something worse, something that looks almost like recognition of a truth too vast for any mind to contain. Titus speaks no word of explanation. He simply walks past Gaius toward the stratageum, leaving behind questions that burn like phosphex. The Perpetual, who has no name anymore, moves through the underhive of Terra with purpose that belies her ancient appearance, her body wrapped in rags that make her indistinguishable from the countless billions who scrape existence from the Emperor's throne world. She has walked these passages before, 10,000 years past, when they were corridors of a palace still under construction, when the Emperor himself strode through halls that now lie buried beneath kilometers of accumulated humanity. Her destination lies deeper than even the Custodes patrol, in chambers sealed by locks that respond only to her genetic signature, to code spoken in languages that died before Old Night began. Inside waits equipment that has not been activated since the day the Emperor ascended the Golden Throne. Instruments designed for a single purpose: to complete the awakening of a weapon that was seeded into humanity's defenders before the heresy shattered everything. She begins the activation sequence with hands that do not shake. Chaplain Leandros has requested private audience with Chapter Master Calgar, a breach of protocol that would normally result in severe censure, but which the Lord of Macragge has granted with curiosity that borders on concern. Leandros kneels before Calgar's throne in the Hall of Ultramar, his skull helm removed to reveal features ravaged by centuries of internal conflict that no enemy blade ever inflicted. He speaks of Graia, of accusations made, of certainty that has crumbled into ash, of sins that he now sees were born from fear rather than faith. Calgar listens in silence, his scarred face betraying nothing of his thoughts, remembering his own decisions regarding Titus, his own failure to intervene when the Inquisition claimed a captain who had never failed his chapter. When Leandros finishes, Calgar speaks a single sentence that carries the weight of 3 centuries. Confession does not undo consequence, but it begins the path toward penance. Leandros weeps for the first time since his ascension. In the stratageum of the Macragge's Honor, Titus stands before hololithic displays that show the current disposition of Indomitus Crusade forces, yet his eyes see nothing of tactical significance. His mind churns with the dream's revelation, with the impossibility of what he experienced, with the shattering realization that his entire existence may have been predetermined by a design older than the Imperium. Is he truly a warrior serving the Emperor by choice, by the loyal devotion that defines every Ultramarine? Or is he merely a weapon, finally approaching the purpose for which it was forged? Is every decision an illusion of agency masking programming so deep that even he cannot detect it? The question poisons everything he thought he knew about himself. Every battle he has won, every brother he has led, every moment of faith that sustained him through centuries of war. Was any of it real? Or was he simply executing functions, fulfilling parameters, becoming what he was always meant to become? The kill team designated Sword of Shadows operates in the furthest reaches of the Imperium Nihilus, hunting Xenos threats in regions where the Astronomican's light barely penetrates and faith itself becomes a currency spent moment by moment. Veteran Watch Sergeant Kalen, who served alongside Titus during the Long Vigil, leads this team through nightmares that would break ordinary warriors, sustained only by the example that Titus set during their years of service together. He remembers a lieutenant who never faltered, who walked through horrors that corroded lesser souls, who taught him that duty transcends fear, transcends doubt, transcends even the question of survival. When the distress signal reaches them, fragmentary and corrupted, yet bearing inquisitorial priority codes, Kalen changes course without hesitation. The signal speaks of Titus, of convergence, of a moment approaching that will determine the fate of something larger than any single warrior. Kalen has long suspected that Titus was more than he appeared. Now he will learn the truth. Roboute Guilliman has summoned Lieutenant Titus to his personal chambers aboard the Macragge's Honor, a summons that echoes through the ship like thunder through mountains. Few warriors have stood in the Primarch's private presence. Fewer still have done so outside the formal context of war council or strategic briefing. Titus approaches those sealed doors with hearts that beat in rhythms his physiology should not permit, uncertainty flooding systems designed to suppress such weakness. When the doors open, when he steps into chambers decorated with relics of an age lost to myth, when he kneels before the Lord of Ultramar and feels the weight of a Primarch's gaze upon his soul, Titus understands that his dream was not mere vision. Guilliman knows. The Primarch speaks with a voice that shaped legions, that conquered galaxies, that defied death itself. "Tell me what you saw, Lieutenant. Tell me what my father showed you." The confession pours from Titus in words that feel inadequate to contain the truth they carry, describing the laboratory of gold, the figure of radiance, the revelation that he was designed rather than merely created. Guilliman listens without interruption, his expression unreadable, his presence a weight that presses upon the chamber's very air. When Titus finishes, silence stretches between them like the void between stars, pregnant with implications that reshape everything. Then Guilliman speaks of things he has never shared with any being since his resurrection, of memories from before the heresy, of whispered projects in the Emperor's laboratories, of contingencies planned for catastrophes that even immortal foresight hoped to prevent. He speaks of perpetuals, of weapons seeded across 10 millennia, of a final gambit designed to activate when all other hopes had failed. "I suspected," Guilliman admits, "but I did not know." Now we both carry a burden that changes nothing and everything. The word-bearers strike without warning, their fleet emerging from the warp in the Macragge's Honor's wake with coordination that speaks of planning stretching across centuries. They have come for Titus, guided by visions that their dark apostles have suffered since the vessel's awakening began, commanded by powers that transcend even the ruinous gods to claim this weapon before it can be turned against the primordial truth. The battle that erupts is fury incarnate, Ultramarines and word-bearers clashing in void and aboard hulls with hatred that predates living memory. Titus fights through corridors painted in blood of both loyalties, his blade reaping heretics with a precision that feels less like skill and more like destiny, each kill bringing him closer to understanding what he truly is. The word-bearers scream his name as they die, cursing him with their final breaths, calling him anathema's last gift. The title resonates in his soul with recognition that terrifies him. In the depths of the enemy flagship, Dark Apostle Malachar has prepared a ritual chamber with care spanning 3 decades, inscribing geometries that hurt reality simply by existing, gathering sacrifices whose souls will fuel an invocation never before attempted. The Chaos Gods have commanded this, speaking through visions that burned away what remained of Malachar's sanity. Titus must be claimed or destroyed, for if the Emperor's weapon reaches its full awakening, it will possess the power to wound the warp itself, to create zones of absolute purity where corruption cannot exist, to push back the darkness that has consumed half the galaxy since the rift tore reality asunder. Malachar does not understand how a single Astartes could threaten gods, does not comprehend the technologies of the Dark Age that the Emperor wove into his design. But he does not need understanding to serve. He needs only faith, and that he possesses in abundance. The ritual begins as the fleets tear each other apart above. Titus cuts his way through the word-bearers' boarding parties with fury that transcends his training, his every motion guided by instincts he has never felt before, powers stirring in the depths of his being that await only the final catalyst to fully awaken. He feels the ritual beginning, feels it like a hook in his soul, attempting to drag him toward corruption one final time. But something else responds, something planted within him by an architect whose vision spanned millennia. And as Titus carves through the last heretic between him and the ritual chamber's entrance, the Perpetual on Terra completes her activation sequence, sending a signal across the galaxy that strikes Titus's consciousness like a thunderbolt of pure, annihilating light. His eyes blaze with golden fire. His voice speaks words in a language that died with the Dark Age, and throughout the warp, the Chaos Gods scream as something they had forgotten, how the fear awakens at last within the vessel they could never corrupt. Not because Titus was merely resistant to their touch, but because he was designed to be their ending. The golden fire consumes everything Titus believed himself to be, rewriting synapses, unlocking chambers of consciousness that had remained sealed since his creation, flooding his awareness with memories that are not his own, yet feel more real than 3 centuries of lived experience. He sees the Emperor's laboratory, not through dream, but through genetic memory encoded in his very essence. Sees the moment when the template for his soul was woven into the genetic architecture of the 13th Legion. He sees other vessels, dozens of them, seated across the legions before the heresy, contingencies designed to survive the worst outcomes of a war the Emperor knew was coming. Most were destroyed during the treachery, their potential erased before it could flower. Some fell to corruption despite their design, proving that even the Emperor's engineering could not guarantee perfection. But one remained. One endured. One walked through fire and shadow and doubt and emerged ready for this moment. Titus. The ritual chamber doors shatter before him, not through physical force, but through will made manifest, through power that predates the Imperium's understanding of the warp. Dark Apostle Malachor turns from his sacrifice with shock that transcends his corrupted features, witnessing something his masters warned him about, yet he never truly believed. Titus stands wreathed in light that burns without consuming, his eyes twin suns that illuminate the chamber's corruption with radiance that makes it writhe and shriek. "You cannot stop what has begun," Malachor screams, his voice layered with demonic harmonics. "The gods themselves demand your soul." Titus speaks, and his voice carries frequencies that shake reality. "Your gods remember fear. They remember the one who created me. And through me, they will remember that even in death, he still has weapons they cannot corrupt, cannot claim, cannot comprehend." The possessed cultists around the ritual circle begin to burn. Fire without heat, light without mercy. Purity weaponized into something that tears through warp-taint like promethium through flesh. The demons that Malachor has bound to his service scream as they are unmade, not banished back to the Imperium, but destroyed utterly, their essence annihilated by power that operates on principles older than chaos itself. Titus walks through the carnage like a figure from scripture made manifest, each step leaving footprints of golden light upon corrupted decking, each breath pushing back the miasma of warp pollution that chokes the chamber. Malachor retreats, his faith crumbling, his connection to his dark patrons flickering as they withdraw from proximity to something that hurts them in ways they had forgotten was possible. "What are you?" he screams, the question tearing from his throat with desperation absolute. Titus raises his blade, and for a moment, just a moment, his features shimmer with an echo of something greater, something that wears his face but transcends his flesh. "I am the answer to a question your gods hoped would never be asked," Titus speaks, and his blade descends with finality that echoes across dimensions. Malachor dies not screaming but silent, his corruption burning away in the instant before death, leaving only the man he had once been, the warrior who had served the Emperor before Lorgar's madness consumed his legion. In that final moment, purified by fire he had sought to corrupt, Malachor sees the truth that Titus carries, and his last emotion is not rage or despair, but something approaching gratitude. The ritual shatters, its power dispersing into the void, and throughout the word-bearer's fleet, warriors who had channeled their faith through Malachor's invocation collapse as the backlash tears through their corrupted souls. The battle turns in an instant, Ultramarines pushing advantage against seemingly disoriented foes. But awakening carries cost, and Titus feels that cost burning through him as the golden fire recedes, as the power that flared in answer to the perpetual signal settles back into dormancy. It was never meant to leave so abruptly. He falls to his knees in the cleansed ritual chamber, his body racked by spasms that his enhanced physiology should prevent, blood streaming from eyes and ears and nose as systems never designed for such power struggle to contain what they have channeled. Brothers find him there, Sergeant Gaius leading a rescue party that had fought through decks of heretics to reach their lieutenant, and they witness something that none of them can comprehend. Titus, unbreakable Titus, kneeling in a pool of his own blood, weeping tears of liquid gold that sizzle upon the decking. He speaks one word before consciousness fails, "Father," and the word carries grief that spans 10,000 years of abandonment and silence. The battle ends in Imperial victory, word-bearers retreating into the warp with losses that will take centuries to recover, their invasion force shattered by coordination of Ultramarine fury and the mysterious collapse of their ritual power. Fleet Admiral Castellion, commanding the naval elements from Macragge's Honors Bridge, witnesses the enemy withdrawal with satisfaction, tempered by reports flooding in from boarding parties. Something happened aboard the enemy flagship, something that his tactical officers cannot explain, something that turned certain defeat into miraculous victory. The boarding party that recovered Lieutenant Titus speaks in hushed tones of golden light and purifying fire, of demons unmade rather than banished, of a warrior who seemed for moments to become something more than Astartes. Castellion records their testimony but seals it immediately, knowing that such accounts will attract inquisitorial attention that the fleet can ill afford during active campaign. He has served long enough to recognize when he has witnessed events above his clearance. Guilliman comes to the Medicae bay where Titus lies unconscious, his wounds healing with speed that surprises even the apothecaries who have treated Primaris Marines since their introduction. The Lord of Ultramar stands vigil beside his lieutenant, this weapon his father designed and seeded into his legion without his knowledge, this answer to prayers he never knew to make. He remembers his father's voice, rare moments during the Great Crusade when the Emperor spoke of contingencies, of futures too dark to contemplate openly, of preparations made against catastrophes that might never come. "You planned for everything," Guilliman whispers to the empty chamber, to the memory of a father who now sits silent upon a throne of torment, "even for me to find him. Even for this moment. Did you see all of it, Father? Did you know what your silence would cost us? What your secrets would demand?" No answer comes. No answer ever comes. Guilliman weeps, and his tears fall upon the face of his father's final gift. The perpetual on Terra feels the activation success across the gulf of space, feels it like warmth returning to limbs long frozen, like light breaking through darkness that has endured for 10 millennia. She has fulfilled one purpose, triggered the awakening that was encoded into systems older than the Imperium, but her mission is not complete. Titus has tasted his power, has glimpsed what he can become, but the full transformation requires guidance, requires teaching that only one of her kind can provide. She must reach him, must travel across a galaxy torn by war and madness, must evade forces both imperial and chaotic that would stop her purpose if they understood what she carries. The knowledge to complete Titus's awakening exists only in her memory, implanted by the Emperor himself in an age when such things were possible. She gathers her meager supplies, adjusts her disguise, and begins the journey toward the Indomitus Crusade's last known position. 10,000 years of waiting ends in a single step. In the warp, the Chaos Gods convene in fury and fear, their vast consciousnesses colliding in ways that would destroy galaxies if such conflicts occurred in real space. They have felt the weapon's awakening, felt one of their servants annihilated by power that should not exist, power that carries the hated signature of the anathema, yet operates through channels they cannot corrupt or influence. The being called Titus represents a threat that transcends their eternal war with the Corpse Emperor, a threat to their very existence as fundamental forces of the Imperium. If more such weapons exist, if the anathema seeded them throughout his legions before the Blessed Heresy, then 10,000 years of patient corruption may be rendered meaningless. They turned their attention toward the Imperium with intensity not seen since Horus stood before the Emperor's throne, pouring power into their mortal servants, demanding that Titus be destroyed before his full awakening can occur. The galaxy shudders as chaos itself declares war upon a single warrior. Titus wakes to silence and starlight, alone in a Medicae bay that has been cleared of all personnel, his body healed, yet forever changed by what passed through it. He rises from the surgical slab with movements that feel simultaneously familiar and alien, looking down at hands that killed demons through will alone, that channeled power of a god who refuses to acknowledge his divinity. He understands now, with clarity that cuts like a blade, that his entire existence has been preparation for a purpose he is only beginning to comprehend. The Emperor designed him to be a weapon against chaos itself, not merely resistant to corruption, but capable of projecting that resistance outward, of creating zones of absolute purity that could push back the warp's encroachment upon reality. But the design is incomplete, the awakening partial, and somewhere in the galaxy, someone carries the knowledge he needs to become what he was meant to be. Titus stares into the void through the Medicae bay's viewport, and for the first time since Graia, he prays, not for victory or salvation, but for the strength to bear what he is becoming, for the wisdom to use the power that sleeps within him, for the faith to believe that even weapons can choose their purpose. Weeks pass in silence after the battle, the Macrag's honor limping toward anchorage at a fortress world whose name means nothing to history, whose significance exists only in its distance from the war that never ends. Titus walks the corridors of the wounded vessel like a ghost moving through the memory of a life he no longer recognizes, brothers parting before him with reverence that borders on fear, none daring to speak of what they witnessed aboard the word-bearer's flagship. He has become something between legend and warning, whispered about in the same breath as saints and monsters, his presence a question that no one possesses the authority to answer. The power sleeps within him still, dormant but present, a fire banked but not extinguished, waiting for fuel that he does not yet understand how to provide. He spends hours in the chapel, kneeling before the Emperor's aquila, seeking guidance from a god whose silence has become the defining truth of humanity's existence. The perpetual travels through the Imperium nailless, crossing the Great Rift through passages known only to those who remember an age before the Imperium's birth, moving toward the Indomitus Crusade with patience measured in millennia rather than mortal spans. She has witnessed empires rise and crumble, has seen humanity crawl from caves to conquer stars, only to forget the knowledge that carried them to heaven, has served the Emperor since before he wore that title, since the ages when he walked among mortals as something almost human. The knowledge she carries weighs nothing upon her shoulders, yet represents power beyond calculation, the final pieces of a design that even Guilliman does not fully comprehend. Titus is not merely a weapon, not simply a tool forged for chaos's destruction. He is the first of a new paradigm, the prototype for something the Emperor hoped would never be necessary, an answer to a question that should never have needed asking. What remains when faith alone proves insufficient? Chaplain Leandros performs the rites of remembrance for brothers fallen in the word-bearer's assault, speaking names that will be carved into the walls of the Temple of Correction on Macragge, reciting deeds that will echo through chapter history until the Ultramarines themselves pass into legend. His voice carries steady through the ceremonial hall, but his eyes drift again and again toward Lieutenant Titus standing among the mourners, toward the warrior whose condemnation launched centuries of torment and whose vindication now reshapes everything Leandros believed about himself. He remembers the young battle brother he was at Graia, so certain of his righteousness, so convinced that the Codex Astartes contained answers for every situation, so blind to the possibility that faith could become fear wearing a righteous mask. The names blur together as he speaks them, the fallen becoming symbols of something larger, of a galaxy that consumes its defenders with mechanical indifference and calls the consumption holy. Inquisitor Lord Thrax receives word of the events aboard the Word-Bearer's flagship through channels that bypass all official communication, through agents placed so deeply within the Crusade's hierarchy that even Guilliman does not know of their existence. He reads the accounts with hands that tremble despite centuries of training, recognizing in the descriptions of golden fire and demon annihilation the very power that the ancient prophecy foretold. The vessel has awakened, at least partially, and the Inquisition now faces a choice that will determine its relevance for the millennium to come. Does it attempt to contain Titus, to control a weapon whose power exceeds anything the Ordos have ever confronted? Does it serve him, recognizing in his existence the Emperor's own will made manifest in ways that render Inquisitorial authority meaningless? Or does it simply bear witness, accepting that some instruments of the divine transcend mortal judgment? Thrax burns the reports and speaks their contents to no one. Some truths are too heavy for institutions built upon certainty. On the world of Gathalammer, the blind preacher who spoke of angels in flames falls silent mid-sermon, his visions fading like mist before sunrise, replaced by a peace he has not known since the gift of prophecy first cursed his existence. The millions gathered before his pulpit watch in confusion as tears stream down his weathered face, as his lips move in prayers too soft for any amplification to capture, as he sinks to his knees upon the cathedral floor and simply weeps with joy that transcends explanation. He has witnessed something across the gulf of the warp, has felt a fire kindle that promises to push back the darkness that has consumed half the galaxy, has experienced hope for the first time since the Great Rift tore reality asunder. He dies that night in his chambers, his heart simply stopping as though its purpose had been fulfilled, and those who prepare his body for burial find his expression frozen in a smile of absolute serenity. His final prophecy remains unspoken, carried into whatever afterlife claims those who serve the Emperor. Guilliman stands alone upon the observation deck of his flagship, watching stars wheel past in the slow rotation of void anchorage, contemplating the weight of revelations that have reshaped his understanding of his father's design. He has commanded legions, has rebuilt an Imperium on the edge of collapse, has faced his traitorous brothers across battlefields wet with blood of millions, yet nothing in his existence has prepared him for the truth that Titus represents. The Emperor planned for everything, even for failure, even for the possibility that 10,000 years of war would prove insufficient to protect humanity from the darkness. He seeded weapons throughout his creation, contingencies that would awaken when all other hope had failed, answers to questions that his sons never knew to ask. And now Guilliman must decide how to wield a weapon whose full potential remains unknown, whose purpose extends beyond mere destruction, whose existence proves that even the master of mankind doubted the certainty of victory. The funeral pyres burn for 3 days upon the fortress world's surface, sending the souls of fallen Ultramarines toward the Emperor's light in pillars of flame that can be seen from orbit. Titus stands among his brothers for every hour of the ceremony, his presence a silent promise that their deaths carried meaning, that the victory they purchased with their blood was worth the cost. Yet within his hearts, questions churn that no amount of ceremonial closure can answer. If he was designed rather than merely created, if his resistance to corruption is mechanism rather than virtue, then can he claim credit for any of the choices that have defined his existence? Is he a hero who chose duty over despair, or simply a weapon executing programming so subtle that even he cannot detect its influence? The flames consume flesh and bone, transforming warriors into ash and memory, and Titus watches their dissolution with eyes that have looked upon the architecture of his own soul and found blueprints where he expected to find freedom. Years pass in the grinding progression of the Indomitus Crusade, world after world reclaimed from darkness, system after system illuminated by the Astronomican's restored light. Titus fights in every campaign, his reputation growing with each victory, his presence becoming a standard around which desperate defenders rally and broken offenses reassemble. He does not speak of what happened aboard the Word-Bearer's flagship, does not acknowledge the power that sleeps within him, does not mention the dreams that now visit him nightly, visions of the perpetual approaching across the war-torn galaxy, carrying knowledge that will complete what the Emperor began. He has become a symbol, an icon, a living sermon on the possibility of endurance beyond reason, of faith beyond doubt, of duty beyond all comprehension. And yet in the quiet hours between battles, when he kneels alone in chapel spaces lit only by votive candles, Titus prays for something no symbol should require. He prays for the courage to choose his own meaning. In the final accounting, when remembrancers who have not yet been born compile the chronicles of this age for generations who will inherit either salvation or damnation, what will they write of Captain Demetrian Titus? Will they name him hero or weapon, saint or instrument, the Emperor's gift to a dying species, or simply another soldier ground to dust beneath the wheel of eternal war? The questions hang in the void like stars waiting to be born, their answers dependent upon choices not yet made, upon battles not yet fought, upon revelations that even now travel through the darkness toward their destined convergence. The perpetual draws closer with each passing day. The Chaos Gods marshal their forces against a threat that predates their understanding. And Titus stands at the center of the storm that has been gathering since before the heresy, his every breath a defiance of the corruption that claims all others, his every heartbeat proof that even in the darkest millennium, some lights refuse to be extinguished. So ends this chronicle of duty beyond reason, of faith tested and purpose revealed, of one warrior whose existence poses questions that may never receive answers. The galaxy burns as it has burned for 10,000 years, and the Emperor sits silent upon his throne of torment, and humanity marches toward a future that promises only war without end. Yet in that darkness, flames kindle that the darkness cannot comprehend, souls endure that corruption cannot touch, weapons awaken that were forged in an age of miracles for purposes that transcend mere survival. What does it mean to be incorruptible in an age of corruption? What does it cost to carry duty beyond all reason? And when the final battle comes, when the last choices are made and the last sacrifice is offered, will the weapons the Emperor forged prove sufficient to save the species he spent his eternity protecting? These questions echo through the void like prayers awaiting answers that may never come, like hymns sung in cathedrals of silence, like the whisper of hope in a universe that has forgotten mercy. The story continues, the war endures, and somewhere in the darkness between stars, Lieutenant Titus walks toward a destiny that will reshape the galaxy itself. One battle at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of uncorrupted faith at a time, until the very end of all things. If this chronicle has stirred something within your soul, if the saga of Captain Titus has kindled questions that demand contemplation, then stand witness with us as we continue to unearth the forgotten legends of the 41st millennium. Like this offering so that others may discover these sacred archives. Subscribe to join those who seek truth in the darkness between stars. Share this chronicle with fellow servants of the Emperor who hunger for narratives worthy of the grim darkness. And in the comments below, speak your thoughts. Tell us what questions haunt you, what legends you wish to see resurrected, what mysteries deserve the light of remembrance. For in this age of forgetting, we are all remembrancers, keeping faith with stories that deserve to endure until the stars themselves grow cold. The Emperor protects,